I mean, it's not uncommon for businesses in that scenario to go bust. And sometimes those businesses don't come back. You may actually not be their primary target. These attackers like to move laterally through businesses to get to their ultimate goal. If you don't have backups, that's obviously the first problem. But your backups are your number one lifeline. I think insurance companies are definitely putting pressure on a lot of companies now if they want their cyber, if they want insurance, unfortunately now they have to go and get cyber essentials. They actually have that key or not. So there are unfortunately circumstances where people have paid and they still don't get the data back at the end.
Hello and welcome.
Hello.
So first of all, who are you?
My name's Richard and I'm the head of cybersecurity at razorblue.
Wonderful. So what got you into cybersecurity?
Always loved computers. My career didn't go the way I wanted it to initially, but I found myself come back into IT. Been working in IT nearly 12, 13 years. I went down the support route, did a lot of IT support. Started off with my first job in a home care company, looking after a single access database, and then very quickly went through to bigger companies, larger enterprise environments. Always had a sort of keen interest in security, and over the last few years been developing more and more certifications and sort of exploring those talents through support and infrastructure.
So you've certainly been around a few different companies and a few different sort of setups and environments. What would you say is your favorite part about being in cybersecurity?
Oh, it's exciting, isn't it? Obviously it's not a great thing for a business when we have a cybersecurity incident, but I suppose what you do want if you have people working on security for you is people who are really enthusiastic about it. It's kind of, it's great to sort of the thrill of finding what is the problem, how did it happen. It's a little bit like being an investigator.
We know who you are, what you do, why you like your job. Just going to do a quick fire round about some questions in and around cybersecurity. You ready?
Go.
If you're a hacker looking to breach a UK business today, what's the easiest way in?
It'll be the people of the business.
What's something you predict will be a major issue in cybersecurity in the next 5 years?
Artificial intelligence.
What is the most important thing you can do to protect yourself in the rise of AI?
Understand it.
If I were to give you 10 minutes and a laptop, how easily could you hack into a company?
Probably the one thing that attackers do have is time. So most of it doesn't usually happen in 10 minutes. But yeah, I suppose you could probably upset somebody in 10 minutes.
Upset someone in 10 minutes. Love it. How would you explain cybersecurity to a CEO who doesn't care about it until they get hacked?
Risk.
In a word, even better. And finally, on the quickfire questions, what is your favorite method of cybersecurity protection?
Preparation.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those points. So how critical is cybersecurity for business today? Obviously, there's lots of companies that implement it in lots of different ways. How important is it that they implement it at all?
Yeah, it's really important. Looking at it from what your business does, without cybersecurity in place, you risk the operations of your business.
So would you say businesses have changed how they prioritize cybersecurity then?
Yeah, definitely. It's becoming more and more of a priority now. I think insurance companies are definitely putting pressure on a lot of companies now if they want their if they want insurance, unfortunately now they have to go and get cyber essentials, or they need to meet a certain criteria or a security baseline.
That's probably something they can do that's more proactive, that's beforehand. So many businesses only think about cybersecurity after something really goes wrong. Why is it so important to move from that reactive standpoint to a proactive, and what else can they do to be more proactive?
I think everybody's seen the memes online where you have a cybersecurity budget before and cybersecurity budget after a cyber attack. If you do the preparation before these things happen, that money that you would have spent wouldn't need to be anywhere near as much. You'd be protecting your business's reputation, you'd be protecting your staff, you'd be protecting your business operations on a daily basis, rather than being reactive and maybe having to think about paying a ransom.
Let's say a business has just been hit by a cyber attack. What are the critical steps they should take in the first 24 hours, or maybe not even 24 hours, first couple of hours, to contain the damage and recover efficiently?
I mean, the first thing you need to do is secure your backups. If you don't have backups, that's obviously the first problem. But your backups are your number one lifeline. Once you've secured those backups, you're going to be thinking about containing the incident. So our job as a security team is to find what we call patient zero. Patient zero is the first infection on a network. Sometimes there are more than one, so we have to be aware that just because we found the first instance, maybe there's more. Then we have to make sure that we clean the network, so we isolate those devices, take them off the network completely. Sometimes those might be key critical servers. It depends what they are, but this is where it becomes a can of worms, and it's a very difficult, long, drawn-out process to recover if you don't have a plan.
So let's say best case scenario, you do have a plan. How quickly, say you've had a virus on one computer, it spread to your entire business. Best case scenario, what's next?
Hopefully you've got the plan. You'd be able to follow the plan, and we would be able to reduce that thinking time to actually executing the recovery.
And how long do you think that would take?
It could be anything. It depends on the size of your business. It depends on how many devices you've got. It depends where those devices are. They could be laptops at home. They could be laptops in another country. They could be machines in a data center. You can't really put a time on it. I'd say you'd be very lucky to get your business back up in 2 days, fully functional.
Wonderful. And then a bit of the converse. Say you haven't prepared. You've done absolutely nothing. What is the worst case scenario?
I mean, it's not uncommon for businesses in that scenario to go bust. And sometimes those businesses don't come back. I've seen it before. I've seen it multiple times. And unfortunately, yeah, it can be the end of a business.
So what sort of leads to them going bust? Is it just the lack of data? Is that basically it?
Yeah, I mean, normally in some cases, if they've lost data because it was corrupted, damaged, and one thing that attackers like to do, especially in the ransomware scene, is they like to try and delete your backups. So again, going back to preparation, if you can prevent that from happening in the first place, you'd be able to recover much quicker.
So just got to continue talking about cyber attacks. There's been a number in the headlines over the last couple of years. I don't suppose you could talk about one, maybe one that made the headlines, example of why it was so effective, the number of people affected, and then why it was so notorious.
Yeah, so the NHS, everybody might remember that one when that happened. It impacted everybody in some way, shape or form. They suffered a ransomware infection, and that spread across machines across the entire country. They were using outdated operating systems. I think it was Windows XP at the time. And I think one of the biggest impact with that scenario was that because the NHS is made up of lots of third-party organizations, the planning, preparation and the strategy and the communication between those companies was non-existent. So the recovery was really, really slow. Lots of stories about, patients' information being stored in spreadsheets, and they were all encrypted and lost.
So very big impact for the entire of the UK, really. You mentioned that it was back to the planning, the bit very first that not necessarily wasn't happening, but something that is the first thing to fail in any sort of disaster or any sort of thing when it goes badly, communication.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think that there's any way that you can prepare to communicate?
Yeah, it goes back to that management support from the beginning. The UK has an organisation called the NCSC, and they set out the British cybersecurity strategy. We strive to follow that in razorblue. We strive to ensure all of our products are aligned with Cyber Essentials. So we're following the UK strategy.
So we've talked about preparation, and let's talk about some of the tools that we can use to protect ourselves against cyber attacks. What would be the makeup of your ideal cybersecurity sort of prevention tool set?
Sure. So I think one of the most prominent things that you can do is have a vulnerability management platform. So that's usually an agent. It's an application that sits on all of your machines, and its job is to look for outdated software, misconfigurations, anything that is a security vulnerability, and use that information to go away and make sure that you plug all of the gaps in your network. Second, you probably really want to look at an endpoint detection and response solution. So instead of trying to plug gaps, this is assuming that somebody may already be on your network. So it's a tool which helps you look for anomalies. If you see suspicious behavior, then it will flag those things and you can go and look at them in more detail and see what was the problem. Was it an adversary, or was it somebody inside your business doing something they shouldn't be doing? But yeah, the EDR solutions allow us to see really granular, finely what's going on, and we can investigate situations.
Things in the technology and cybersecurity sector are constantly changing. How do you stay up to date with cybersecurity?
As an ISC squared member, I need to keep up to date. It's one of the things I have to do to maintain my certifications. So it would be everything from webinars, taking on new security courses. Recently did an auditing course, reading news articles, everything. It's just an immersive thing. You don't go to work with security, you kind of live it and breathe it.
Okay, so I'm going to pivot that question slightly. That's how you stay up to date with it. How should a business stay up to date with cybersecurity?
Yeah, one of the ways that you can do that is just to have a really good technology partner. They'll be able to guide you and help you through some of the more difficult questions that you might have. One of the benefits of working with a partner as well is that you get more than one person. So we don't just have a security operations team that react, work on prevention and work on, responding to a security incidents, but we've also got talented security engineers in the design process. Secure by design is a big thing these days. Security is embedded throughout our business. It's not just in the security team.
So one word that I keep hearing around is SOC. I know what it means. It's not just the things on your feet. Would you care to tell us more about it?
It's an acronym for Security Operations Center. So it is basically a team of cybersecurity professionals who respond to security incidents, and it's as simple as that.
Simple as that. Yeah, nice. I've got another acronym that I also don't answer, but I wanted to go into it. For 2FA or MFA, I hear that's used a lot right now. I know it's used a lot. How can it help you actually protect your business?
Well, multi-factor authentication basically is a protection mechanism for if somebody gives away their password. So if I was to tell you my password, you would be able to log in, but you wouldn't be able to fully log in until you've accepted a further prompt on a mobile device, or maybe you've had to go and type a number from an email. There are lots of different forms of multi-factor authentication. You mentioned 2FA. That just means that there's two factors of authentication. Multi-factor, there could be more than one. There could be three. There could be biometrics. It could be physical.
What would you say to any CEO or anyone who just says, "Oh, this is really annoying. I have to type in this PIN again. Oh, I need to wait for the text to come through. Or I need to select a number on a phone." Like, those are all things I hear quite a lot. What would you say to counter that?
I think you need to look at the solution that you've got in place. There are ways that you can streamline these solutions. Single sign-on is one really good way to improve efficiency around those things. And if you couple that with conditional access, then you can make it so that these multi-factor authentication requests are only really required if you're in a risky place. Mm-hmm. So you're, not in the office, or you're in a different country.
Yes, I can speak from experience that when we're accessing our internal tools and we're signed into our razorblue laptops, most places that are not, like you said, highly secure, you can just access because you're in the office, you are who you say you are because you've logged into your laptop, and single sign-in takes place. And then it's only when you go to maybe some of the backups, that's when you get prompted for additional verification. So is that exactly what you're on about?
Exactly, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Another word that I keep hearing talked about is Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus, cyber insurance. How does that all link together?
So Cyber Essentials is the government-backed cybersecurity scheme. It's essentially a baseline of security which you can apply to small businesses. Cyber Essentials Basic is the first certification that you can get. It is basically a self-certification, but you can get your IT partner to help you get through that as well, because some of the questions aren't always straightforward. Cybersecurity Plus is basically Cyber Essentials Basic, but we go away and actually test the technical controls and the things that you've self-certified in the basic certification.
And then how does that all link to cyber insurance?
Because there is an agreed baseline set out by the government, insurance companies are using this baseline as a point of reference and a stamp of approval, should we call it.
Thank you very much. I've asked all the questions other than I have 5 true or false questions. If you've not seen these before, you're ready for them.
Go.
If there is a vulnerability, it will be exploited.
False.
Interesting. Why?
So I can think of multiple vulnerabilities that exist which have never been exploited. It's about risk. So it's not uncommon to find a device that is on a network for years and years and years, and it will never get exploited just because the risk was low enough that nobody did breach that network. So it's not uncommon that vulnerabilities don't get exploited, but what you're doing is controlling the level of risk.
So they could be
They
exploited.
definitely can and will be if an adversary gets onto your network, most likely.
The biggest cybersecurity threat to any company is its own employees.
True.
We've already talked about this a little bit. Employees are going to be the weakest link in any cybersecurity chain.
Yeah, 100%. You've got people who may be disgruntled. You've got people who just are opportunistic. They might feel like that data belongs to them. You've got people who may be negligent. It's very easy to breach GDPR if you've not trained your staff. People are curious. They'll pick up USB drives and they'll bring them in and stick them in your laptops. But yeah, people, unless you train them and get them on board and have a positive culture, you're more likely to suffer some kind of breach through a person.
Okay, so training, positive culture, there's all the big takeaways there. If you pay a ransom, you'll always get your data back.
No. False.
We'll get there one day, Rich, won't we?
So I suppose it's the attackers want you to think that they can 100% retrieve that data. What happens in ransomware is when they encrypt your data, when it's encrypted, it creates a very special key. There are circumstances where sometimes they don't get that key that they've created. And you won't ever know whether they actually have that key or not. So there are, unfortunately, circumstances where people have paid and they still don't get the data back at the end. On top of that, as well, if you do pay the ransom, then that's something that the ransom gangs will communicate between each other. You will be a high value target because they know that you've fallen for it in the past.
So you've fallen for it, you're more likely to pay to get your data back.
Yeah.
And obviously you're a bigger target. Yeah, exactly. Final true or false question. If a hacker gets access to one employee's email, they could take down the entire business.
True.
Really?
Yeah, potentially. So, I mean, the hacker isn't going to make themselves known if they've breached your network. They're going to try and hide that for as long as they possibly can. They will only actually make themselves known once they've done what they've intended to do. And that is normally going to be ransomware. It could be that they're trying to laterally move between businesses. You may actually not be their primary target. These attackers like to move laterally through businesses to get to their ultimate goal. So if an attacker was looking to breach an MSP, they might actually aim for our suppliers first. So we're well aware of that sort of thing.
Brilliant. Thank you for answering all of those questions so eloquently. Thank you ever so much for coming and talking to me today.
Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to say as a final statement?
Yeah, my final thought is that there are still a lot of businesses out there that are not heeding advice around multi-factor authentication. I can count on one hand how many times clients have been breached where they have full multi-factor authentication and conditional access in place. Every single time we have a breach, 99% of the time, it's a person who's been phished and multi-factor authentication is still not in place. And that's usually through not adhering to the warnings, not taking the advice that we make sure that we protect our networks with multi-factor authentication. It's still a hot topic all these years on.